I think just being in a room full of people, queer people, has such a power in the simple fact that you all are existing in that space, that you're not alone in it.
So it's a fair statement to make that Mormonism has not been depicted in the best lights when it comes to this show. And I mean, let's be honest, when you consider their policies towards queer people, it's kind of not all that surprising. But it's important to remember, and as with any religion, there are people within those religions who are working really hard to try and make it more inclusive, more open, and more welcoming for queer folks. And one of the groups that has been working really tirelessly to make that progress is Understanding Sexuality, Gender and Allyship, or UGSA for short, which is a support group that gave queer students who were attending Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, a place to find community and meet other people like them and just be and not feel like so isolated and alone. And one of the people that went there religiously, see what I did there, is AJ Romriell, who is a US-based writer who also, fun fact, happens to be the partner of Terrance O'Brien Henderson, who was on Lost Spaces last year. Keeping up? Good, good. We got together to talk about why that group was so vital and important to AJ in his coming out journey. And on top of that, like how symbolic and significant it was that the university allowed that group to meet on campus. Until, of course, they didn't allow that group to meet on campus. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, and I'll let AJ give you the details on that bit of the story. We start off the conversation with AJ telling me about how it feels to have just finished his first book, Wolf Act, which is a collection of linked personal essays about growing up queer and neurodivergent in the Mormon faith. And that book is coming out this year, so it's really exciting. It's all very fresh and just cool. My name is Kay Anderson, and this is Lost Spaces, the podcast all about lost queer spaces and their importance in shaping who we've become. Let's get into it.
I'm telling you, I have that, my memoir coming out, and it's just realizing just how honest I get in my life. It gets very stressful sometimes, but I'm very open about a lot of things.
Why does that get stressful?
I think, especially because with Mormonism, they teach you to hide everything.
Yeah.
Well, when you're a queer person, especially, that I grew up just lying and hiding everything. And so it's both very cathartic and beautiful and also somewhat difficult to be so honest in something like that.
And is it the honesty itself that's difficult, or thinking about the repercussions of the honesty?
I think it's thinking about the repercussions. Just, what are people going to think of me? And I don't want to care about that sort of stuff, but,
And when you say people, do you mean everyone in the entire world, or are you thinking about specific people?
Everyone in the entire world. Most of the people, I'm close to know, all these stories and know what's in there. And I even reached out to a lot of the people who are in the book to ask if they wanted me to change their names. And this is what is going in there. Not asking for permission, but just to say, like, heads up, like with my ex-husband and whatnot. So I'm not too afraid of that, but...
Who are you most afraid of, though?
I am most afraid... There is the first, like, real person that I had a crush on was in my sophomore year of high school. And, not counting the celebrity crushes and stuff like that. But sophomore year of high school, I was cast in the musical Into the Woods.
Okay. And were you the Woods?
Pretty much. I was in the, chorus, which the original show didn't have.
Oh.
So they just kind of inserted me into...
Everyone gets a medal.
Random songs.
Okay.
I guess. It was really weird. But the guy... I'm not going to say his name.
Okay.
Because I'm a little bit nervous.
Let's call him Maxwell, because that's a fun name.
Maxwell.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, Maxwell. So Maxwell, he played the wolf in Into the Woods. And that's kind of how I met him. He was kind of a senior. He was the star of the theater department at the time. And I was just so into him. I write about that, and I'm not even afraid about that. But later on, when I eventually came out to him later in life, he admitted that he had those feelings as well.
About you?
And
sorry, I didn't mean to sound...
Not about me. No, not about... He didn't say about me, though I kind of had this fantasy of like, ooh. But when he learned that I planned on essentially following the path of homosexuality...
Mm-hmm. The calling.
Living, he was like, oh, really? I'm not going to do that. And so he is now married to a woman. He has a kid. As far as I can tell via, Facebook and Instagram and stuff, he has also left the religion. And for all I know, he's bi.
Yeah.
Or he's talked to his wife about it. I just don't know.
But you're judging him anyway.
If he hasn't... And if he ends up like reading the book, like it's...
Okay, yeah.
If you know who he is, you know who he is.
Oh, okay.
So I don't want to be like outing.
Couldn't you have changed the musical though, and then
Well, the reason that it needed to be that specific is because the book is called Wolf Act.
Oh, okay. And it's about how you became a furry.
It should be.
Well, that was going to be my follow-up question. Do you whenever you see a wolf now, are you like...
No, but they are my favorite animal, always have been.
But always have been, even before this guy played the wolf in Into the Woods and you crushed on him big time?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yep. Yeah. I think that may have intensified said love. Oh. But no, I always loved him.
Well, so you're worried about him finding out? Are you worried about anyone else finding out?
Not really. Again, I have remained pretty honest in my daily life about things. While I don't go and advertise the fact that I, had an affair at one point, I'm not necessarily shy about it either. Mm-hmm. I've written about it in things that have been published online already. I spent too long hiding that I just don't want to do it anymore. And so I try to be as open as I can, especially because I know it was through hearing other people's stories, that I started to understand that I wasn't alone in things, that there were other people out there who could understand.
Yeah.
What I was going through, and that's what I hope to give back.
So let's scratch at the statement that you just made, which is, I spent so long hiding. Mm-hmm. I have a sense of what you mean by that.
Yeah.
But can you go into a bit more detail?
So it tends to always come back to the Mormon religion, and growing up Mormon in Utah, especially, where 63% of the population at least in 2021, was
Did
Mormon.
You do research before this interview?
No, I did the research for the book.
Okay. Oh, damn. So we're like, oh, well.
I did do some research just so I could have some facts right. Yeah, so it was, you know, such a high population. All my friends were Mormon. It was just kind of a daily life thing. And part of that was just included this long list of rules that you had to follow in order to get into heaven. And getting into heaven was so important because then you could be with your family for eternity. It was like the big selling point of the religion, that if you were good enough, you would get rewarded, you know, general thing with a lot of religion. But on that list, you know, there was the don't drink alcohol, don't do drugs, don't drink coffee, don't drink caffeinated tea, don't listen to inappropriate music, don't wear clothes that are too revealing. There's a lot of rules, including this don't be gay, don't be gay, don't be gay. And they've adjusted that over time, where now it's more of a, you can be gay, just don't act on the gay.
Yeah, which is kind of worse.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Kind of love the sinner, hate the sin sort of speak, where it's like, we love you, we just kind of hate who you are.
Oh, I don't know why I'm laughing. Yeah.
It's because it's so ridiculous. It's kind of funny.
Well, and so, so I'm assuming I'm going to, say some things here to kind of speed up our conversation, but tell me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming that you were born into it. You just kind of went along with it because that's what you do when you're a kid. You're like, oh, okay, mum and dad, this is what you say is the thing that we do. Let's go and do it. And then you carried on in that way for a number of years. Do you remember the first time you thought, oh, this is a bit shit, actually?
I think it was probably in my first year of college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because up until that point, you know, I realized I was gay when I was 11 and buried that deep, kind of had this idea of like, especially because of that Mormon speak, I was able to say, well, I'm attracted to men, but I can never love a man.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm not actually gay. And this is a temptation I can push away. And believed, you know, if I did all the right things, if I followed all the rules, if I went on a, you know, Mormon mission, that God would take it away. Which, of course, you know, didn't work. And my first year of college, still having these feelings that were coming up and not being able to banish them, it felt like this betrayal from, you know, God. It was like, wow, I'm doing everything right and I'm still having these issues, and what's the frickin' point? You know, why am I doing all these things if I'm not getting anything back from it? Even still, I went on a mission after that first year of college, went to Switzerland and Germany, and came back early because of mental health issues a few months in.
A few months? Wait, how long are missions?
They're supposed to be 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
And so what is involved in a mission? It's like going and spreading the word, right?
Yeah, essentially.
But so what does that actually look like?
You you are sent somewhere chosen by the church. You are paired up with a companion, as they call it, this person that you cannot leave your side except to go to the bathroom. You have to be with each other at all times. And you go around and you knock on doors and ask people if they want to hear about the religion. You try to get people baptized. Almost becomes this competition in numbers of how many people have baptized.
But wait, hang on. So you're going around Germany and Switzerland in countries where the predominant language isn't English, and you're like, hey.
Yeah. So at the beginning, before you're sent out to the country,
you do an intensive language course.
Yeah, you go to, you kind of get sequestered in the Missionary Training Center, which was in Provo, Utah. You go there, you're dropped off, and it's a gated place that you are not really allowed to leave. They have all your laundry, they have food, they have everything that you kind of like technically need. And you take these essentially intensive classes to learn the language and learn how to teach the religion. And I was there for 9 weeks learning the language. As I would say, probably like spiritual German, because I didn't really know how to have a regular conversation, but I could speak about Jesus. Yeah, and then you're sent out after those weeks into like the actual mission field, as they would call it, and start knocking on doors.
Wait, okay, sorry, I took us off a bit.
No, it's fine.
We were talking about you like having that moment of being like, I don't think this is for me. When you were describing that, you said that you were kind of angry at God because you were doing everything right. So how could he not take away your homosexuality? In reflecting on like how I think I would have responded, I think I would have been like, I must be doing something wrong. Did you have those feelings?
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of this very mixed bag of feeling so much guilt because it all felt like it was my fault somehow. That if I were better, if I were reading the scriptures more, if I was praying more, if I was doing all these things, then it would be taken away. And so half the time I was feeling that, half the time I was angry because I felt like I was doing enough. And it was just back and forth, but it was all really negative, really harmful feelings.
And do you know what the catalyst was, like what the trigger thing was for you to go, actually, no?
So I finally left, I would say officially on November 5th, 2015, because it was the day that the church released a policy change that officially labeled people in gay relationships as apostates to the religion, which means that they were actively working against it. And it also barred their children from being allowed in the religion until they were over 18 and essentially disowned their parents. And so even though I came out in 2012, I had spent those 3 years trying to find a bridge between these two kind of communities, this queer community that I was a part of and this religious community I was a part of. And I'd done a lot of work in doing that. I marched in the, Mormons Building Bridges Pride, in the Pride Parade that year, and done all these things. And I remember that felt like the ultimate kind of crushing betrayal, where I was like, no, okay, I've tried for so long to work on the inside to change what's going on, and this just no longer feels right to me. And it was building. Like, I'd stopped going to church. I had stopped a lot of this stuff, but I still kind of considered myself in it somewhat until that day where I was like, nope, can't do it. And actually my entire immediate family essentially left then too. My dad, who had taught gospel doctrine every Sunday for, I think it was 18 years, went and told the bishop, the head of the congregation, that he was done and he never went back.
Wow. Well done to your parents.
Yeah, they're pretty
That's
cool.
Incredible. What was coming out to them like?
It's actually especially interesting because my oldest brother is also gay.
Okay.
So he's 10 years older than me.
Did he pave the way then, or did you pave the way for him?
I would say he paved the way for the most part. He came out when he was 17, 18. So I was, 7 or 8. And so he came out. My parents were always pretty liberal about these things. And they, may not have responded the very best. Yeah. I don't even know all the details there. But I know that they responded very lovingly. And still, my brother ended up going down a very destructive path. He became addicted to meth pretty early on. And, he's sober now, which is amazing. But I remember seeing all this happen and kind of associating that with being gay It was like, if I am gay, then I am also addicted to drugs, and I'm also going to hurt my family. And I became very determined to be the good gay son for a long time, which is why, even though I knew my family was very supportive, I refused to come out to them because I refused to accept the fact that I was gay. So when I did come out to them, it was very emotional, but they were amazing about it. And my brother was actually there the night I came out to my parents. And when I told him, I remember his first words being, "No wonder you felt so alone." So it was a beautiful moment with my family.
So how did it happen? Like
the coming out?
Yeah.
Well, I had started to realize, I'd started to finally accept it. And it was putting all this turmoil in me of like, am I going to actually say this out loud to people? And ended up being, I was trying to join a pyramid scheme thing.
Was it Avon?
No, I don't even remember what it was called. It was some sort of skincare thing.
Okay. So it was like Avon.
Yeah. And the guy that I was kind of like currently crushing on was the one inviting me to do it. So I was really wanting to do it. No. And I told my brother about it, and he was like, don't do that. That's a terrible idea. And I got really angry, and I like yelled at him, and I ran upstairs, slammed my bedroom door, and my mom like walked in really hesitantly, and she was like, "Okay, this isn't about the pyramid scheme."
Astute.
What's going on? And it was a lot of crying, being like, "No, I can't say. And then I finally did. And I cried for a long time. And, my parents had suspected, looking back, and we've talked about it since, that there were a lot of times they were trying to get me to tell them that I just was so just against doing. I just refused.
And they didn't try with multi-level marketing schemes?
No.
Oh, see, that's where they went wrong.
I know. That's all they needed to do. Yeah, for everybody out there, that's what'll get people to come out.
Yeah, if you've got a friend who you're trying to gently coax out of the closet, why not just try and get them into a pyramid scheme?
And then tell them it's a bad idea when they've accepted that they're going to do it.
Yes, door slamming must be involved, I think.
Yes,
some kind of tantrum.
Absolutely.
But, okay, so back to the November the 5th, 2015. Mm-hmm. How did it feel to be like, that's it, I'm done?
It was very freeing. It was painful to kind of think about how much energy I'd put into it, and losing a religion like that, even though I'd already leaving, it's its own kind of death and requires its own kind of mourning.
And how do you mourn? How do you do that?
It's a really good question. I think having so many people around me that were such a good support, including my family, my friends, that all helped, to be able to just talk through it with people who understood what was happening. And were also in that kind of pain. So being able to come together in that was really helpful. And honestly, it kind of just took getting through it, going day to day. And I kind of looked into some other religious possibilities, but...
Oh, like multi-level marketing?
No, like paganism.
Well, paganism seems kind of, from an outsider's perspective, it seems kind of like friendly and light and like...
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, I had one of my friends is pagan, and she was just kind of telling me about it. I'm like, ooh, tell me more. Since now I'm not Mormon, let's talk about this.
Yeah, everything's on the table.
Yeah.
Because it's messy, right? Like it was such a big part of your identity for so long to suddenly not be this thing that you've been for however many years of your life is a bit jarring and a bit weird. How long do you think it took you to be comfortable saying I'm not Mormon?
I think because I was so upset by it.
Yeah.
That happened pretty immediately at that point.
But that doesn't mean you were comfortable with saying it.
I guess that's true. Although I think there was somewhat of a sense of pride
Yeah.
that I had in saying that I wasn't anymore, that I had left, that I wasn't in agreement to what they were doing. And the years leading up to that, I think, was the more murky area from like when I came out to that 2015 time. I would say a lot of that time, by all definitions, I wasn't really Mormon.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I wasn't following all the rules. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't really praying anymore. But I think I didn't want to say that I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think that was that space of being really afraid to say that I didn't want to be a part of the religion anymore. Just because of all that means, you say that you don't want to be a part of it, and suddenly you are losing not only your communities right now, possibly, but an eternal life with your family in heaven. You know, that's the stakes, eternity. And the stakes for, you know, leaving the religion is they don't believe in hell, they believe in outer darkness. Which, you know, is essentially, you know, the lowest form of afterlife, and you are outside the light of God's love type of thing. And it's reserved for those who basically made all the promises and covenants and things and then decided to leave. So that's where I'd be going, and I would be separated from everybody I loved forever.
Will I be there with you?
No, because you were never a part of the religion.
Well, then, so where do I go?
So there are 3 kingdoms. They have like tiered kingdom levels.
Okay.
Where you have the top one, the celestial kingdom, where all the good Mormons go. And then you have the second one, and I always forget whether it's telestial or terrestrial. It's one of the two.
Okay.
The second one, that's where you would go. So that's where it's like you are a good person in life.
Wait.
But
who said I was a good person?
Well, you didn't murder anyone, I assume.
I mean, not this month.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's time then. You can repent.
Okay. Wait, okay. So I get a better deal than you?
Yes. Because I was a part of the religion. And I'm actually below Hitler because he would be in the third kingdom where all the really bad people go. I'm just not even in a kingdom. I'm floating in outer space, essentially, forever.
But I don't know, that sounds kind of nice.
You know, I remember thinking when we were learning about like what afterlife would be like, there was the whole you get to create your own planet sort of thing that was fun to imagine. I don't know if you... Yeah, Mormons...
Wait, everyone gets a planet?
Yeah, because you become like God eventually. And so you're the god over your own planet.
Oh, wouldn't that get a bit crowded?
Well, you know, the universe is infinite.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe it's different dimensions. I don't know. They never went into those kind of details.
Oh, okay.
But I remember thinking, you know, hearing so much that a lot of the afterlife was the same kind of missionary work where you're teaching the people who weren't a part of the religion about God.
Why would you want to do that?
Things. And I was like, that sounds so horrible. Like, I don't want to do that forever. What?
I've got to learn more languages?
God, I was never even good at German. I tried. It's rough.
Okay, I'm learning a lot about Mormonism today. I think I just kind of took it on face value when people were like, yeah, it's really weird. I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And now I'm learning more. I'm like, what? Huh? How? What? Like thousands upon thousands of people like go along with this?
Well, yeah, and I didn't even really realize how weird everything was until I was with Terrance, who didn't really know anything about it. And I would say random things like talk about the planet that we'd get. And he'd be like, what? That's so weird. And I'd be like, oh, I guess that is kind of weird, I guess.
How long?
Yeah.
I'm so indecisive as well. I'd be so terrible at like decorating my planet. Or does everyone just get the same kind of planet? Like,
I think you essentially get to, I mean, at least I believe that I could make it what I wanted. I even had this little belief for a time. I was like, I'm going to make it really gay when I get up there. I'm going to make that okay.
So what's on your gay planet?
I remember there were going to be a lot of giraffes and wolves. I remember that being a thing. I don't remember why, but I remember that was a thing. And there was just going to be a lot of opportunity to be gay. It was like, creating my own paradise.
So lots of opportunity to be gay. What does that mean? Like that there's a glory hole in every corner?
Yes. Yeah. Where it's just easily accessible. But then people wouldn't use it because people want to have that excitement.
Of the
sneakiness.
Okay. Oh, that's a good point. It's only fun if it's off limits.
Right.
Okay. So I've learned a lot about Mormonism. Why don't we go to our lost space for today, where I think I might be learning more about Mormonism?
Yes.
So, USGA. What does that stand for?
So these days, they've actually changed it. It now stands for Understanding Sexuality, Gender, and Allyship. When I first started there in going to it in 2012, it stood for Understanding Same Gender Attraction because that was the language that was like approved.
Can I just interject quickly to say how much I love when people uptake their acronyms, but I like determined to keep the acronym, but they'll just change the wording a bit. And I think they've done a wonderful job. So I just want to put that out into the universe.
Yeah, I think so too. I when I saw that was actually part of the research I was doing to make sure I had all my facts straight. And I was like, oh my God, they changed this. That's cool. That's better.
But they didn't need to change the logo or the email addresses or website.
Or the website. Although it is this, United States Golf Association also uses that. So, But yeah, it was, an unofficial club of BYU, which is the Mormon college. It's Mormon private university.
And so you went to this university?
So I didn't actually.
Oh, okay.
I went to a university that was essentially in the same city. It kind of became the anti-BYU. And
what makes it anti? Because it's less religious?
Yeah, more free, thinking. Because at BYU you had to take Bible history sort of classes and all these different things to be able to go there.
What do you cover in Bible history? Is it like, in 1937, we changed this passage of the Bible so we would all suddenly hate homosexuals?
Probably. That's just what I assume. They're like, sodomy now means gay. Just more indoctrination, you know.
I guess.
The usual.
Yeah, sorry to make a joke of it.
No, so I heard about the group because of this video that they released in the spring of 2012 called It Gets Better at BYU, part of the It Gets Better project. It's actually what made me accept that I was gay was watching this video, because it was all these people my age who were struggling with the same things I struggled with, that went on missions and came back for the same reasons I did. And it was like this moment of like, oh shit, I think this is real. I think this is happening. And so it finally caused the breakdown that made me finally accept the fact that I was gay and that this wasn't a thing that was going to go away. And that there were other people out there who understood.
And so do you remember like how you came upon this video?
Yeah, it was on Facebook.
Okay.
It was something one of my friends from my first year of college had shared. And I just happened upon it while I was in my room on my laptop. And totally unsuspecting. I didn't even know what like It Gets Better was. So I just started watching it and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. And then it got really real and led to a full-on breakdown where I ran into the bathroom and
was there more door slamming?
Cried, and it was more door slamming, yes.
Good.
And weeping on the floor.
Oh wow. Like what? So the response was that strong?
Yeah. Just because, you know, it's this, again, there are a lot of stakes in it, but there's also just that realization where you understand why things have been the way they've been. It's that realization of like, oh, there was a reason I've been hurting There's a reason behind why I've been struggling so much. And that reason is scary, but also I understand more about myself. And I now have an opportunity to figure this out.
Was there anything leading up to this point? Because I know you said that you recognized that you were gay at 11 and you decided to push it down. Did it ever surface up earlier, or was this like just it, the pot boiling over?
It was mostly that, just because I kind of excused away everything else. So like, you know, I watched gay porn growing up, and then I would feel very guilty and hate myself and then try to repent for it. And then I'd go and do it again. So there was that sort of stuff. And then the little crushes that I had that I persuaded myself were, I just wanted to be really good friends.
Yeah.
And then what really kind of led up to it was I had returned from my mission early, as I said, a couple months before this. And I started seeing a therapist for the first time ever. Love therapy. And he was really wonderful. And after a few months, he asked me, well, basically he was like, we're not getting anywhere at this point, and it's because we need to figure out why you hate yourself. And I was like, I don't hate myself. What? And he said, yes, you do. Why do you hate yourself? So I went home and I was thinking about that for a few days. And then I saw this video a few days after that conversation. And I think it was just kind of that barrel roll that smashed into me. Where it's like, oh, this is why.
Wow. And then what's the feeling and what are the thoughts in the days following this?
There's a lot of fear about what it actually means to be gay. Because really the only gay person I really knew was my brother. And, you know, that wasn't the path I really wanted to take. And so there was, a lot of fear happening, a lot of who do I tell, when do I tell them, how are they going to react, especially with so many friends being a part of the religion. My family's still somewhat being a part of the religion. There's still that minor bit of fear of like, oh, are they going to see me differently?
Yeah, of course.
So there was that struggle, and it's what made me realize I really wanted to go to USGA. And even though it was like part of a school I wasn't a part of, I reached out to the president to be like, can I come? Because I need a community.
Okay, because that was going to be my follow-up question. And if it was me, I would probably have gone through months of talking myself into it, talking myself out of it, talking myself into it, talking myself out of it, deciding to go, then not going. But you were staunch. You were like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna have to go and see what this is about.
Yeah, because I just reading about it and seeing the video, it was like I need to meet these people that have had this effect on me, and here's this group that is dedicated to figuring out how to bridge this gap between sexuality and spirituality that I don't know how to figure out. And then here's this group that's a half-hour drive away from me who is set on figuring that out.
So what's the time delay between you watching that video on Facebook and going to your first meeting?
About a month.
Okay.
Overall. Because it was, beginning of April, I saw the video. Beginning of, I think it was like May 5th was my first meeting.
You're really good at remembering dates.
I charted it all out at one point for the book.
Okay.
Because I was like, I need to make sure I'm consistent.
Do you remember that first meeting?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
I guess I remember details. I remember driving up. I remember the hallways were really dark because it was at night.
Oh.
It's an unofficial club at BYU. Basically, so I'm saying you can meet, but we're not
endorsing
supporting
you?
it.
Okay.
Endorsing it, yeah. And at the time it was on BYU campus still. It was they were holding it in a classroom, and I walked in, I went and like sat by myself on the side, and this guy, Nathan, who was the vice president at the time, came and sat next to me and introduced himself and asked me who I was. And, we started talking, and I can't fully remember what the meeting was about. And then after he asked if I wanted to join them when they all would go to, they did like after sort of late dinners, because it was like, I think the meeting started at 8. So at 9, we'd go out to eat places. There were really only 2 nearby places that were open. It was a Wendy's and and this place called Rancheritos. It was a Mexican food. So I went with them there, and that's where like, because during the meetings was a bit more official, and we'd have like presenters or panels.
Okay. Oh, so it wasn't like this, because in my brain, you were all sitting in a circle and talking about yourselves. So it wasn't that.
It depended on the day, but yeah,
It wasn't an AA
it definitely
meeting,
wasn't
was
that. You know, it started out more that way, and then as the numbers grew, because it gets better at BYU video got national attention.
Okay.
It was huge, especially in Utah. And so their numbers spiked after that. So when that incoming fall, they had to move to a bigger room.
Okay. Interesting.
To be able to fit everyone.
And then they were like, we don't want to hear any of your stories anymore.
Well, they were like, we have to get panels to like select whose stories we're hearing. Yeah. And then the kind of like after dinner times were more the times we'd talk, like kind of sit in a circle and talk about the kind of more human, this is what we're going through. And
Or have the opportunity to have those little breakouts of like 2 or 3 people and get to know people one-on-one.
Yep. And so after that, I was like, okay, I'm coming every week to this.
Aww. Well, did you go to Wendy's or did you go to Rancheritos?
We went to Wendy's the first night.
Okay. Interesting choice.
And it was, well, it's because it was one of the only places open. The little small town. And one of the only places that kind of allowed us, because there were so many of us who would go. So suddenly, 30 people would show up.
Okay, yeah. He could accommodate you. So it's not about allowing you.
Yes.
We just need to go on the record. Don't want to be sued by Wendy's for or other businesses in the area who are like, hang on, we would have allowed you. We weren't banning you.
We weren't banning the queers.
Okay, and I'm going to ask this question again. How did it feel in the days following that?
It felt like a burden had been lifted of sorts. I just felt lighter. I felt like it wasn't all on me. Like I had given some part of this secret a voice, and now it wasn't just kind of locked inside me anymore.
Did you do much talking on that first day?
No. Maybe in Wendy's a little bit more, but for the most part, I was, especially in the meeting, I was just silent.
Yeah.
I just didn't know any gay people. And so I didn't even know how to orient myself, how to talk to another person like that, In a lot of ways, I didn't even really know how to be kind of human, because I'd just gotten back from that mission where where you kind of get weird because you're surrounded by religion, you're talking about religion all the time, you don't really talk about anything else.
Doing one thing, yeah.
It felt really freeing and exciting to be around so many queer people and to feel like I was a part of something bigger than myself.
And so did it become the meeting that you went to every week without fail?
Without fail. I remember I was reading a journal that I was writing in at the time, some time back, and I had actually written about how I was going to go and ask my boss to give me Thursday nights off so I could go to this meeting. Which he did. And so I was able to go every week, and I went every week for a long time.
What did it teach you about yourself?
I think it's one of the main things that taught me how important stories are to me and how important storytelling is. That, seeing that video, going to this place, hearing so many people talk about going through similar things that I was going through, just how much that changed me and shaped me and in a lot of ways saved me. And it was really one of the first times I realized just how much power storytelling can have. And it's one of the main reasons I ended up changing my major to creative writing. You know, I always wanted to write, but it was never like something I was actively doing in school, stuff like that.
Because it wasn't like the sensible thing to do, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like, I'll do that as a hobby. Maybe I'll go and be a therapist in the meantime. But I was, I floundered in school my first 2 years because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I took some time off to be like, what do I want to do with my life? And so I chose like creative writing, found a school that had a specialization in that and switched over to that. But it was that moment that I realized just how much I wanted it and why I wanted it. And kind of started me on a crazy trajectory, I guess. 'Cause now I'm in grad school for creative writing. So
What do you remember of the feelings of being in those meetings?
I remember feeling very safe, that the people in that room with me were never going to judge me too harshly when it came to sexuality and all that. I could talk to them about these things, that I could really be myself in a way that I had never been before. Some of the first places I really was allowed myself to be honest about the struggles I was having with the religion and believing in it, or the fact that I wanted to go on a date with a guy finally. That I had a place to actually admit those things. It was one of the first places I was allowed to be honest. And that felt so warm and inviting. And I think just being in a room full of people, queer people, has such a power in the simple fact that you all are existing in that space, that you're not alone in it, that you've come together, and that there's a power in that. And I think that's what just made me need to keep going, because I needed to know that I wasn't alone, because I felt so alone all the time. In that room was the one place I felt like I had people who fully understood what was happening and who I was.
And so what happened with USGA?
Yeah, so I started, going in spring 2012, and it started getting a lot of public attention. And by November 2012, the presidency, who I'd become really close with and were kind of my best friends in the group.
With the president, yeah.
Went to like the awards with them and stuff, the Trevor Project Awards that happened. It was cool. And they ended up getting a phone call, a very urgent phone call, saying that from a Utah senator.
What?
Yeah, saying that he'd essentially learned that BYU was planning to kick USGA off of campus, or essentially destroy it completely, because of these outside rumors that they'd been hearing that it was a hookup club, that people went there to meet other gay people and have sex. And it was basically a big old orgy in the room. So they were going to try to shut it down. And so they got warning about this and kind of had to make the decision of like, do we protest or do we try to find some peace in what's happening? Because the scary thing is with BYU is that the people who go there, there's this honor code that you have to follow, which is, essentially the Mormon rules.
Okay.
And if you don't follow those, they can kick you out of the school, no matter how far along you are in it. And then, if you're a senior, 4 years. Down the drain.
But so just quickly, was there any sense of where these rumors came from?
It was all very hush-hush, but it seemed like it was coming from the outside community of BYU. and some possible BYU professors
Oh.
who...
But they weren't like, we found semen in the room. Like, it was like there was no evidence or anything. It was all just...
Yep. It was all just
Okay.
speculation, just people who didn't want it to exist. If they ended up hearing about where the rumors came from, they never released it.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have been made up for all I know.
But and anyway, so the presidency of the club had that decision to make. Like, do we just like go along with this and close it down, or do we stand up for the group?
Yeah.
And what happened?
So they ended up kind of finding this middle ground-ish where they gave up the location and they moved off of campus. And in return, the church would not use honor code stuff to try to kick out the people who were a part of the club. And so, they essentially were forced to move off of campus. They ended up lying to the public and saying that their numbers were getting too big and they needed a bigger room. And luckily, there's this guy who donated money to USGA, essentially paid for the room in the library for them to meet every week. And so we moved there for a while, and that's actually where it kind of remains to this day. They have tried to get it back on campus. They've petitioned. They've tried to make it an official club, but BYU still pushes against it. And this is 10 years later.
Or it's just the unjustness of it as well. They're being in that position where you're over a barrel. You can't, there's no way other than the university's way in that situation. And that must be so maddening.
I remember it was a very painful thing, especially for the president at the time. Her name was Bridie. She was the original president, I believe. I believe she was the original one. She ended up stepping down right around that time. And I remember it just being such a painful thing for her because it felt like they had been making all this progress and then to be thrown out like that. There was a power to being on campus. There was this, one, accessibility was a thing. But two, is we're trying to navigate this really stressful space. But with it being on BYU campus makes it feel like we are allowed to navigate this space.
Yeah, and belong. You belong to the university that you're a part of. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of being ousted, being kicked off. And it was really hard for a lot of us. And for a while, we didn't actually think that the club would survive it.
Yeah.
But people came together in some really cool ways. But it was devastating for a lot of us who had been going for so long and were really attached to that. It was it was in the law building. It's where the classroom was that we originally met, which I just kind of find funny. I don't know. But there was a very sacred space in a way where we could come together like that. And then to all of a sudden, and for a lot of people, it was very immediate. It was very sudden, no warning. They got that phone call at the end of November. And basically when people came back from winter break in January, it was suddenly in the library now, the city library.
But they carried on.
Yeah.
You could, sorry, that sounded so callous. Well, they carried on.
No.
Let's move on.
No, it is though. It's a thing where they survived and they kept going and still there.
I'm going to ask questions about you again. This is a hypothetical. It might be difficult to answer. It might not. But maybe you shouldn't say so much before I just ask the damn question. Where do you think you would be today if you'd never had access to that group?
Oh, God. It's hard to know, obviously. I know my dad has often said that the group was one of the main reasons why my journey and my brother's journey were so different. It's because he actually went to BYU for a semester and it was horrible for him and all these bad things. He had no community to speak of, while I did. And so, yeah, there's the possibility I would have gone down a darker path. But I also know that at the time, I did have suicide ideation. And so I could have ended things. I might not be here at all if I hadn't had that. Because again, there's that power in community, in not feeling so alone. Because I think something so common about the queer experience is feeling alone. There's this inner journey that I feel like we all have to go on, in accepting ourselves, in announcing ourselves, in being okay with ourselves, and being happy and proud. And that journey is really hard to take alone. I don't know if you can take it alone. And so having that community meant everything to me. And I don't even want to know where I'd be without it.
And once again, that is us. Thank you so much for joining us and sitting in on this conversation, and I hope you got as much out of AJ's insights as I did. If you did love this conversation and you want to find out more about AJ, then I will make sure that I share details to his socials in the show notes for this episode. And as I said at the top of the show, his new book, Wolf Act, is out later this year, and I would really encourage you to seek it out and devour it with your eyes when it is released. If you want to see more from me or see clips of the conversations I've been having, then I can be found on TikTok and Instagram as Lost Spaces Pod. Right. Hope you have a fantastic day and that the rest of your week continues to slay. That rhymes, but it's not really a thing I would say. Oh, that rhymed as well. Okay, I'm just blabbing now. I will see you next week.